I pretended to be someone else. My real name is Olivia, but for a long time, I lived behind a fake identity. I created a new name and a new life. My new name was Isabella. Then I fell in love with a wonderful man, but I was lying to him. I was lying to everyone. This is my story. I grew up in a quiet, isolated town, far from the city. My family was poor. We lived in a tiny, drafty house that was freezing in winter and stifling in summer. My father worked himself to the bone in a noisy factory, coming home every day covered in grime, utterly exhausted. My mother was chronically ill, confined to her bed, and I became her nurse. At 20 years old, I didn't feel young. I had no time for friends or fun. My life was a cycle of cooking, cleaning, and washing clothes. I was tired, I was sad, and when I looked out the window at the birds, I longed to fly away. I wanted a better life. I wanted to be happy. I wanted to be rich. Then, tragedy struck. My mother passed away, leaving me shattered. A few months later, my father's heart simply stopped. Suddenly, I was entirely alone. With no family, no money, and no food, the empty house felt like a tomb. The memories were too painful to bear. I packed a small bag with my few belongings, took my last bit of money, and bought a ticket to the big city. As the train pulled away, watching my small town disappear, I was terrified, but I was also ready for something new. I arrived at night to a city of towering buildings, blinding lights, and thousands of people rushing past. I felt like an insignificant speck. I rented a dark, cramped room in a dangerous part of town and began to hunt for work. I walked everywhere, asking for a chance, but people only saw my cheap shoes and worn-out coat. They asked for degrees and experience. When I told them I had only worked at home, they turned me away. I felt useless. Nobody wanted Olivia. I looked into a broken mirror on my wall and saw a face full of anger. I realized that if nobody wanted Olivia, I simply wouldn't be Olivia anymore. I decided to lie. I chose the name Isabella. It sounded beautiful, rich, and intelligent. I spent my last $50 on a professional black dress and a white shirt. I washed my face, brushed my hair, and stood tall. In that mirror, I didn't see poor Olivia. I saw Isabella. I went to the public library and drafted a resume filled with fabrications. I claimed I had attended an expensive university and worked at a famous bank. I printed it with shaking hands, knowing I was doing something wrong. But I was desperate. I walked into a sleek, glass-walled business building and marched to the front desk. My heart hammered against my ribs like a drum, but I smiled and introduced myself as Isabella. I was ushered into an office, where a man in an expensive suit interviewed me. I spoke slowly, used sophisticated words I'd heard on television, and projected a confidence I didn't feel. He believed every word. "You are very impressive, Isabella," he said. "You have the job." I had done it. I had a good job, a real salary, and a future. But as I sat in my dark room that night, a cold fear settled in my stomach. I had to keep lying. I had to be Isabella every single day. I learned on the job by watching others, working late every night to keep up the charade. Soon, I was earning more money than I had ever seen. I moved into a bright, beautiful apartment, bought elegant clothes, and gained the respect of my colleagues. To them, I was the perfect, successful Isabella. But at night, I returned to my apartment and locked the door. I washed off the makeup, looked in the mirror, and saw Olivia again, the lonely, sad girl. Lying is heavy work. It exhausts your bones. I lived in constant terror that someone would call my fake university or discover the fraud. Then I met Leo. He worked in the same building, and our paths crossed when I bumped into him, sending a box of papers flying. As we knelt to pick them up, our hands touched. I felt a spark of magic. He was kind, gentle, and utterly unlike the arrogant men I worked with. We started talking, and he made me laugh, a real deep laugh. One day, he asked me to lunch at a park. As we sat on a green bench, he asked about my family. The old fear returned, but I told him my usual lies about doctor parents and a big house by the ocean. He listened, then told me about his own upbringing on a farm, emphasizing that honesty was everything to him. "A good life is an honest life," he said. Every word felt like a knife in my chest. We grew closer, spending every free moment together. One rainy evening, under an umbrella, he told me he was falling in love with me and kissed me. I loved him back with everything I had, but my heart was breaking. I was a thief, stealing his love under a false name. I hated myself. The lies became impossible to manage. One day at a street market, a woman from my hometown recognized me. "Olivia?" she asked. I panicked. I looked at her with cold, blank eyes and denied knowing her. "My name is Isabella," I said. She walked away, confused, but Leo was suspicious. I had lied right to his face, and the magic of our day evaporated. Things reached a breaking point when Leo invited me to his parents' farm for dinner. I was terrified, but I couldn't say no. His family was warm and genuine, and they welcomed me with open arms. We sat at a beautiful wooden table, and once again, I fed them poison lies about my background. His mother told me, "Leo has a pure heart. He cannot handle deception. Thank you for making him so happy." Her trust was a physical blow. I couldn't breathe. I ran out of the house into the cool night air, sobbing. Leo followed me. I couldn't hide anymore. "My name is not Isabella," I sobbed. "I am Olivia. I am poor. I am a liar." I told him everything, the factory, the illness, the deaths, and the resume. He stood as still as stone. When I told him my love for him was the only real thing in my life, he laughed bitterly. "I fell in love with Isabella," he said. "You are a stranger who lied to my face for a year." He drove me back to the city in silence and told me never to speak to him again. The next morning, I went to my office and confessed everything to my boss. He fired me immediately. I was back at the bottom, poor and alone, but for the first time in years, the weight on my chest was gone. I was standing on solid ground. I sold everything, moved into a tiny cheap room, and started over. I walked into a local bakery and told the owner, Mr. Rossi, the truth. I had no degree, but I was honest and willing to work hard. He hired me. It was grueling work, but I was happy. I was Olivia again. I went to night school to finish my education and built a simple, honest life. Yet, there was a Leo-shaped hole in my heart. A year passed, and one cold Tuesday morning, the bell above the bakery door rang. It was Leo. He looked older and tired, but his eyes were the same. "I was angry for a long time," he said softly. "But I realized that the way you laughed at my jokes, the way you held my hand, that was real." The girl I fell in love with is standing right in front of me. He reached over the counter and took my flower-covered hand. I don't want perfect. I want real. I want you. We started over, slowly and honestly. We built a relationship on rock, not thin glass. A few years later, we opened our own cafe together. Yesterday, in that little shop, Leo got down on one knee and asked me to marry him. I said yes 1,000 times. I'm not rich or famous, but I am free. I learned that lies are a shiny prison. You lock yourself inside, always looking over your shoulder, unable to breathe or love truly. The truth can be hard, but it is freedom. To anyone listening, you do not need to be someone else. Do not hide your story. Your struggles make you who you are, and they make you strong. If someone cannot love you for your true self, they do not deserve you. Take off the mask, take a deep breath, and step into the light. Be exactly who you are. Your true life is waiting, and it is beautiful. Just be you.